My name is Janet, and this is the story of how a woman's attempt to destroy her ex-husband through their children became the very reason she lost everything she held dear. This tale of manipulation, lies, and ultimate justice will show you that sometimes the most powerful revenge comes not from the wronged party, but from the innocent victims who finally see the truth. It all started when David Martinez filed for divorce from his wife Linda, after discovering her affair with her personal trainer. What should have been a straightforward divorce proceeding turned into an 8-year nightmare that would destroy lives, tear apart a family, and ultimately lead to the most satisfying comeuppance I have ever witnessed. David and Linda had been married for 12 years and had 3 beautiful children together. Emma, who was 10 at the time of the divorce, Michael, who was 8, and little Sophie, who was only 5 years old. David was a devoted father who had always been actively involved in his children's lives. He coached Emma's soccer team, helped Michael with his homework every night, and never missed reading bedtime stories to Sophie. He was the type of father who took his children on weekend adventures, taught them to ride bikes, and was always there for every school play, recital, and sporting event. Linda, on the other hand, had always been more focused on her social life and personal interests. She spent her days at the gym, the spa, or shopping with friends while David worked long hours to provide for the family, and still made time to be present for his children. When David discovered the affair, he was heartbroken but tried to handle the divorce as amicably as possible for the sake of their children. However, Linda had different plans. The moment David filed for divorce, Linda transformed into a vindictive and calculating woman, hell-bent on making him pay for daring to leave her. She hired the most ruthless divorce attorney in town, and began a campaign of destruction that would make your blood run cold. Linda's first strategy was to paint David as an abusive father and husband. She filed false police reports claiming domestic violence, made up stories about David being physically aggressive with the children, and even went as far as to coach the children to lie to social workers and court-appointed psychologists. She would tell Emma, Michael, and Sophie that their father was dangerous, that he would hurt them if they spent time with him, and that she was the only one who could protect them. The manipulation was systematic and brutal. Linda would tell the children that their father did not love them anymore, that he had abandoned them for his new life, and that he was trying to take them away from her forever. She would make them write letters to the court begging not to see their father, and she would reward them with special treats and privileges when they said bad things about David in front of the court-appointed officials. The children, who were young and trusted their mother completely, began to believe these lies. Emma, who had once been Daddy's little girl and never missed their weekly father-daughter dates, suddenly refused to see David, and would cry hysterically whenever his name was mentioned. Michael, who used to worship his father and wanted to be just like him when he grew up, started telling people that his dad was mean and scary. Little Sophie, who was barely old enough to understand what was happening, began having nightmares about her father coming to take her away from Mommy. The court system, designed to protect children, became Linda's weapon of choice. She filed motion after motion, claiming that David was violating court orders, that he was emotionally abusing the children during his supervised visits, and that his very presence was traumatizing them. Every interaction with the children was scrutinized, every conversation was twisted, and every attempt David made to maintain a relationship with his children was portrayed as evidence of his instability and unfitness as a parent. David's supervised visits became a nightmare. He would arrive at the court-ordered facility, excited to see his children, only to have them refuse to come out of the car or spend the entire visit crying and asking to go home. Linda would sit in the parking lot, visible through the windows, making sure the children knew she was watching and disapproving of their interaction with their father. The psychological warfare extended beyond the court system. Linda enrolled the children in therapy, but only with therapists who would support her narrative. She would prep the children before each session, reminding them of all the reasons why Daddy was bad, and why they should be afraid of him. When therapists began to see through her manipulation and suggested that the children might be victims of parental alienation, Linda would immediately find new therapists who would tell her what she wanted to hear. David's life became a living hell. He was spending thousands of dollars on legal fees, fighting for the right to see his own children, and watching helplessly as they were turned against him. His reputation in the community was destroyed by Linda's false accusations. Friends and neighbors began to distance themselves, believing that where there was smoke, there must be fire. His career suffered as the stress and constant court appearances took their toll on his performance at work. But Linda was not satisfied with just destroying David's relationship with his children. She wanted to destroy him financially as well. She demanded excessive alimony and child support, claiming that she could not work because she needed to protect the children from their father full-time. She hired private investigators to follow David, hoping to find evidence of wrongdoing that she could use against him in court. When that failed, she began making accusations about his mental health, claiming that he was unstable and potentially dangerous. The breaking point came when Linda convinced the children to write a letter to the judge, begging never to see their father again. The letter was heart-wrenching, filled with claims that their father made them feel scared and uncomfortable, and that they would rather go to foster care than spend time with him. David read this letter in court and felt his heart shatter into a million pieces. These were the children he had loved unconditionally, the children he had sacrificed everything for, and they were asking a judge to remove him from their lives forever. The judge, faced with 3 children who seemed genuinely terrified of their father, made the devastating decision to terminate David's parental rights pending a comprehensive psychological evaluation of the entire family. David was forbidden from contacting his children in any way, and Linda had achieved exactly what she wanted: complete control and the total destruction of the man who had dared to leave her. For the next 4 years, David lived in a state of profound grief and desperation. He continued to pay child support for children he was not allowed to see, continued to fight the legal battle despite mounting debt, and held on to the hope that someday his children would see the truth. He sent birthday cards and Christmas presents that were returned unopened. He attended school events from a distance, just to catch a glimpse of his children, knowing that if Linda saw him, there would be more accusations and more legal trouble. Meanwhile, Linda was living her best life. She had successfully painted herself as a heroic single mother, who had protected her children from an abusive father. She received sympathy and support from everyone around her, was awarded substantial alimony and child support, and had complete control over 3 children who had been programmed to worship her and fear their father. But children have a way of growing up, and the truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it has been buried. The first crack in Linda's carefully constructed lie came when Emma turned 14. As a teenager, Emma began to question things more critically, and started to notice inconsistencies in her mother's stories about her father. She remembered fragments of her early childhood, moments of joy and love with her dad that did not match the monster her mother had described. She began to wonder why her father would send birthday cards and Christmas presents if he was as terrible as her mother claimed. Emma started doing her own research, looking up court records online, and reading the details of her parents' divorce case. What she found shocked her to her core. She discovered that many of her mother's claims had been investigated and found to be unsubstantiated. She read testimonies from teachers, neighbors, and family friends who described her father as a loving and devoted parent. She found records of the supervised visits that painted her father as desperate and heartbroken, not angry and abusive. The revelation that changed everything came when Emma found a recording on her mother's phone. Linda had been careless and had not deleted an old voice memo where she was coaching Sophie, who was then only 6 years old, on what to say to the court psychologist. In the recording, Linda could be heard telling Sophie to say that Daddy touched her in inappropriate places, promising her a new toy if she remembered to tell the doctor exactly what Mommy had taught her. Emma was horrified. She realized that her mother had not only lied about their father, but had coached them to make false accusations of the most serious kind. She understood for the first time that she and her siblings had been used as weapons in their mother's war against their father, and that their father had been the victim, not the perpetrator. Emma's awakening triggered a chain reaction. She began to share her discoveries with Michael, who was now 12 and old enough to understand the implications of what their mother had done. Together, they started to remember their father differently, recalling his kindness, his patience, and his love. They began to see their mother's behavior for what it really was: manipulative, controlling, and abusive. The final straw came when Linda began dating a man named Rick, who moved into their house and began treating the children poorly. Rick was everything their mother had claimed their father was: angry, controlling, and intimidating. He would yell at the children for minor infractions, criticize them constantly, and make it clear that he resented their presence in his relationship with their mother. When Michael tried to talk to his mother about Rick's behavior, Linda dismissed his concerns and told him that he was being dramatic and ungrateful. She was so focused on her new relationship that she began to neglect the children she had claimed to be protecting. The house that had once been kept immaculate became messy and chaotic. Meals became irregular, and Linda was often gone for days at a time, leaving the children to fend for themselves. Emma, now 15 and mature beyond her years, made a decision that would change everything. She reached out to her father through social media, sending him a message that simply said, "Dad, I remember now. I am sorry. Can we talk?" David, who had never stopped hoping for this moment, responded immediately. The reunion was emotional and heartbreaking. Emma broke down in tears, apologizing for the years of pain she had caused him and begging for his forgiveness. David held his daughter and told her that she had nothing to apologize for, that she had been a child who was manipulated and abused, and that he had never stopped loving her for even a single day. Emma's courage inspired Michael and Sophie to reach out to their father as well. The family reunions were beautiful and devastating at the same time. The children were horrified to learn about the extent of their mother's lies and the damage they had unknowingly helped to inflict on their father. They learned that David had never stopped fighting for them, had never stopped loving them, and had spent years living in agony, not because of anything he had done, but because of the lies they had been fed. The children's decision to reconnect with their father sent Linda into a rage. She threatened them, grounded them, and tried to use the same manipulation tactics that had worked when they were younger. But the children were older now, wiser, and they had seen the truth. They refused to be pawns in her game any longer. Emma, Michael, and Sophie made a collective decision that would deliver the most devastating blow Linda could imagine. They chose to live with their father. Not only did they choose him, but they also made the decision to testify in court about the years of manipulation, lies, and coaching they had endured. They were ready to tell the truth about what their mother had done to them and to their father. The court case that followed was unlike anything Linda had expected. Instead of the scared, manipulated children who had once begged never to see their father, the judge was faced with three articulate young people who spoke clearly and convincingly about years of psychological abuse at the hands of their mother. They detailed the coaching, the lies, the manipulation, and the false accusations they had been forced to make. Emma presented the court with the recording she had found, the one where Linda coached Sophie to make false accusations of sexual abuse. The courtroom was silent as they listened to Linda's voice instructing a 6-year-old child to lie about her father in the most damaging way possible. Michael testified about the years of being told that his father was dangerous and abusive, only to discover that his father had been nothing but loving and patient during the brief supervised visits he was allowed. He spoke about the emotional abuse of being forced to choose between his parents and being punished whenever he showed any affection for his father. Sophie, now 9 years old and old enough to understand what had happened to her, testified about being coached to lie to doctors and social workers. She spoke about the confusion and fear she had lived with, not understanding why she was supposed to hate the father who had always been kind to her. The judge was appalled by what he heard. The evidence of parental alienation was overwhelming, and the damage that Linda had inflicted on her own children in her quest for revenge was undeniable. In a stunning reversal, the judge awarded full custody to David and ordered supervised visitation for Linda, contingent on her undergoing extensive psychological evaluation and treatment. But the children's revenge against their mother was not finished. Emma, Michael, and Sophie collectively decided that they no longer wanted any relationship with Linda. They refused to attend the supervised visits, and when the court tried to encourage them to maintain contact with their mother, they spoke clearly about their decision to cut her out of their lives completely. Linda, who had spent 8 years manipulating the system to destroy her ex-husband, and had seemingly won everything, suddenly found herself with nothing. The children she had claimed to love and protect wanted nothing to do with her. The community that had once supported her began to see her for what she really was when the truth came out. The man she had tried to destroy was now raising their children, and being celebrated as a devoted father who had never given up on his kids. The financial consequences were severe as well. David filed a lawsuit against Linda for the years of legal fees, lost wages, and emotional distress caused by her false accusations. The court found in his favor, ordering Linda to pay substantial damages for the frivolous litigation and malicious prosecution she had engaged in for nearly a decade. Linda's new relationship with Rick crumbled when he realized the extent of her deception and manipulation. He wanted nothing to do with a woman who could use her own children as weapons and make false accusations of abuse. Linda found herself alone, ostracized by her community, and facing financial ruin. The most devastating blow came on Mother's Day, 2 years after the children had chosen to live with their father. Emma, Michael, and Sophie sent Linda a card. Inside, they had written a message that delivered the final, crushing blow to the woman who had spent years trying to destroy their father. Dear Linda, we are writing to thank you for teaching us the most important lesson of our lives: how to recognize the difference between real love and manipulation. Dad never stopped loving us, even when you convinced us to hate him. Dad never gave up on us, even when you made us afraid of him. Dad forgave us immediately when we realized the truth, even though we had hurt him for years. Real love is patient, forgiving, and unconditional. What you showed us was not love. It was control, manipulation, and abuse. We choose love. We choose Dad. We choose to move forward with our lives without you in them. Thank you for showing us exactly what kind of people we never want to become. Emma, Michael, and Sophie. Linda's attempt to destroy her ex-husband had backfired in the most spectacular way imaginable. The children she had manipulated became the instruments of her own downfall. The man she had tried to destroy was now thriving, surrounded by the love of his children who appreciated him more than ever because they understood what they had almost lost. David's relationship with his children was stronger than it had ever been. The years of separation had taught them all not to take each other for granted. The children worked hard to make up for the lost time, and David cherished every moment with them, knowing how close he had come to losing them forever. The community that had once ostracized David began to see him as a hero, a father who had never given up on his children despite years of abuse and false accusations. His story became an inspiration to other parents dealing with parental alienation, showing them that love and patience could ultimately triumph over manipulation and lies. Linda, meanwhile, became a cautionary tale. Parents going through difficult divorces would whisper about the woman who had used her children as weapons and ended up losing everything. Her name became synonymous with the dangers of parental alienation and the importance of putting children's needs above personal vendettas. The final twist in this story of justice came 5 years later, when Linda was diagnosed with a serious illness and reached out to her children, hoping that her health crisis might inspire forgiveness and reconciliation. The children, now young adults, made a decision that showed both their maturity and the extent of the damage Linda had caused. They sent her a brief message: "We hope you recover and find peace. We have moved on with our lives and have no desire to revisit the past. We wish you well, but we will not be part of your future. The consequences of your choices are yours to bear." Linda had spent 8 years trying to destroy her ex-husband through their children, only to discover that children grow up, truth surfaces, and the victims of manipulation eventually become its judges. She had lost everything: her children, her reputation, her financial security, and her dignity, in pursuit of a revenge that ultimately consumed her completely. This story serves as a powerful reminder that when you use children as weapons, you risk losing them forever. When you build your victory on lies and manipulation, eventually the truth will set your victims free, and they will become the architects of your downfall. Linda learned too late that the most devastating revenge often comes not from the person you wronged, but from the innocent victims who finally see through your deception and choose to walk away from you forever. If this story of family betrayal, manipulation, and ultimate justice left you shocked and satisfied, then you have found your home here at Revenge Janet. This is exactly the kind of content we live for. Stories where the truth prevails, karma delivers devastating blows, and justice is served in the most unexpected ways. Hit that subscribe button right now because we upload new revenge stories regularly that will keep you on the edge of your seat and leave you completely satisfied. Ring that notification bell so you never miss a story of betrayal meeting its match and wrongdoers getting exactly what they deserve. Share this story with anyone who believes in the power of truth and justice, and join our community of people who know that karma always finds a way.